Welcome back to Bets of the North on Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Tyler Shoemaker making real money bets every week and helping you have a fun college football viewing weekend, maybe make a little bit of money. And T-Shoe, I'm selling a short. Little bit of money. We started with $5,000 of a real bankroll. We said at the end of the year, we're either going to give $5,000 to charity or we're going to give what the bankroll is if we are making money. And we are making money so far, T-Shoe. We have turned that $5,000 into $6,813. I'm not good at math, but that feels like a what? Like 300% return on the investment? I don't know. That's pretty good, right?
That's very good. I think that's even better than we could have hoped for at this point. I mean, obviously, I always talk about you hope to go 55%. And right now we're 4-1 and we're literally a pick six away from being 5-0. So we'll definitely take it. It's been a good season so far. Hopefully we can keep it rolling.
So we also are a miracle away from being 3-2 because last week's bet was a $500 bet on the Washington State Boise State over. And the total was 63 when we bet it at minus 112. That total T-Shoe was not looking very good. The score was 45 to set. Well, first of all, the score was 24-10. Boise State was ahead going into the fourth quarter. So the total was at 34 going into the fourth quarter, and we needed it to get to 63. And then when it was 45-17, a total of 62, Boise State scored. Washington State got the ball back with 4 minutes and 16 seconds left on the clock, down 28. And for some reason, they decided to go on an 11-play, 75-yard touchdown drive and punch in the final score with 19 seconds left to get the over. I was up at 2:00 in the morning Eastern time, soaking that thing in. I think my 80-year-old mother was up watching because she sent me a text and said, "Oh, I want you guys to make your bet." Were you up at 2:00 in the morning watching us cash that miracle over?
I wasn't. Surprisingly, I wasn't because when I went to bed, it just looked like it was dead. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to stay up and watch this thing not even come close. So, I had a good Saturday. I think all my bets ended up 15-10. So I was like, I'm just going to go to bed happy and not be up mad about this bet not cashing. But that was the first thing I checked when I woke up. And I was like, oh, hell yes. Like we cashed. And I had all kinds of tweets and DMs from people celebrating with me. So I was excited.
So the fourth quarter went touchdown, touchdown, punt, touchdown, stopped on downs, touchdown, touchdown for us to get that over. I'll take it. Right? I mean, like we don't have to apologize for that, right? We don't apologize.
No, we don't apologize because there are plenty of people that win bets like that all the time, and you don't apologize. You just stick out your chest and say that's knew it was going to go like that. But that fourth quarter is how kind of my projections and my assessment of the game. That's how I thought the whole game was going to go. It just took 3 quarters. Took 3 quarters to get there, but we'll take it. It's not like I would be a little more apologetic if it was like super fluky in terms of how the points were scored. But it was just offense going down the field and scoring touchdowns. It's not like a muffed punt. Now you got a 2-yard short field touchdown. Like I'm not going to apologize for that.
No. So, and it's one of those. It was kind of cool because all the announcers these days are just very aware of what's going on in the betting world, and they're not afraid to talk about it. So when they say things like, oh, there's going to be some very happy people, about things like that, and you're one of the happy people, then it makes you feel kind of famous.
Yeah. And then conversely, when you're on the other side, like I was on the other side of that for the Dolphins Titans the other night when the Titans decided to punch one in late that killed the under. So, you don't feel as good in that situation. So no. betting goes both ways for sure. I'm sure we'll be, like I said, just 2 weeks ago, we were on the wrong side of that. So it happens.
Yeah. So I was happy for the one thing that we were on. I was just looking at these stats this week. The individual players in college football who have the most runs of 20 yards or more. We've been talking about this a lot for the Ohio State-Iowa game because Caleb Johnson, the Iowa running back, leads the nation with 12. Ashton Genty, the Boise State running back, is second with 10 runs of 20 yards or more. And John Mateer, the Washington State quarterback, is third with 8 runs this year of 20 yards or more. So we had like 2 explosive dudes running the ball, which is why we like that over, and they got us there. So we're not going to apologize. Thanks, Ashton. Thanks, John. I call him Baker because he wears a headband and eye black. The other thing that we hit on felt great and then was like, what? And then it worked was the $100 bet we made on the Alabama money line plus 110. So we won $210 on that. You and I felt great about that. They jumped out to a huge lead. We felt like geniuses. I was on the post-game show on Kings of the North live on Saturday night, ready to quit my job, delete my Twitter, and crawl into a cave after Georgia came back and took the lead. But then the Tide, baby. Roll Tide.
Man, when I saw your tweet about the ESPN headline of striking distance, and then Georgia like takes the lead late, I was like, oh God, I was worried for you. Yeah, I was worried for you in that situation.
Don't tweet during college football games, because just because a thing just happened doesn't mean it's going to keep happening. And college football media can't help themselves. They're like, well, it's 7-0. That must mean this game is going to be 81-0. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. I'm done tweeting during games. So the result was we had an awesome week last week, Tishu. As we said, we're up more than $1,800 for the year, but we won the $500 bet. We won the plus money swing. And then on our other best bets, you went 3-1 and I went 2-1. So I think this was our best overall week to date. And you said you just had a great week in general, right?
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it started, I was complaining 2 weeks ago because I felt like I was on the wrong end of every bad beat that happened. And that's kind of how this week started, beginning Friday night. And then at some point midday on Saturday, my luck just completely changed and I rattled off. I went on like a 13-2 run of winning bets. I mean, it was nuts. So wow. I was ecstatic to have such a good week.
So overall for the season now, best bets, these are not the real money bets. These are our other best bets. You're 8-9, I'm 5-6, but we're on the way back. We're 4-1 overall in the $500 bets. We're up 1472.09 just on those bets. And then we've been good with the upset picks, with the plus money things where we're either doing parlays or we're picking money line underdogs. We're up $340.91 there. And I would agree, Tishu. I think everything is coming up, Tishu, except that a hurricane hit your town.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I'm going to try to keep things in perspective. So like when I complain about this, understand that I realize I'm extremely fortunate that like my house is still intact and we literally didn't have any damage. However, it is an extreme inconvenience that not only, so our power was out. So, we changed the schedule last week. Power comes back. Everything's great Sunday night. And then randomly yesterday, my internet went out and is still out. So that's why, our video looks a little strange now because I'm having to do this on my phone over cellular data. So it's just kind of been one thing after another. But again, like, perspective, the city of Asheville is literally like wiped off the map. So I'm not complaining really. I'm just complaining, from a first world problems kind of place.
Yeah. So thoughts and wishes with everybody who was affected by the hurricane. We hope everybody is able to get their lives back in shape, and it's a devastating thing, obviously, for a lot of people in this country. But it does. We are ridiculous. This is a ridiculous thing that we do. We don't play the sport. Yeah. We're not even talking about the sport. We're talking about betting on the sport. But I am imagining like a person standing in your front yard and being like, "We are here live at the home of Tyler Shoemaker, where his life has been moderately inconvenienced because he must get on cellular data to do his college football betting show." It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds bad when you say it like that.
No, but I mean, like, but we appreciate you grinding it out. So we did do the show a day early last week, and we still managed to, have a really good week. And so we're back doing the show this week. So we're just here to have a good time. But again, thoughts and best wishes with everybody there. Let's talk about the bets we're going to make this week. And we have zeroed in on a team that we are very familiar with. And I think it's not a surprise that we at times tend to lean towards betting on Ohio State, but we're trying to win money for feeding America. So we're not going to shy away from something that we have some confidence in. Tishu, earlier this year, we hit on an Ohio State individual team total on an over, I think in week 2. And I think that might have been the bet we felt best about this year. And it hit pretty convincingly.
Yeah. I mean, you and I both just have a good handle both on the numbers for Ohio State, and we just kind of know the tendencies of the team, of Ryan Day, and how they tend to think about game plans going into certain opponents. And I think this is another week where we do have a good feel, and I've got some numbers also to back that up as well.
So we're not going to shy away from it. Our $500 real money bet is the first half total for the Ohio State-Iowa game. So it is both teams. It's not a single team total, but it's just for the first half. Rather than trying to take this at over 45 for the entire game, where we were concerned about getting into some world where maybe Ohio State has a lead and kind of backs off because they have a trip to Oregon the next week, and maybe they put in the backups pretty early. Maybe the Iowa defense makes some great halftime adjustments and shuts things down. Maybe the Ohio State defense does too. So we just want to do it on the first half when we know everybody's going to be going pedal to the metal. 23.5 is the number that we got it at, Tishu. First of all, that's an incredibly key number, right? I like the idea of a 17-7 first half wins for us. That doesn't seem like a lot to ask. I was very happy at this number.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing you want to look at when you're considering either full game or half or quarter, is what kind of key numbers can you get? And you mentioned the full game total has been 45 and a half at some spots throughout this week. 45 is a really key number on full game totals. And, I mentioned I had some numbers here. So since the Akron game, which we're going to throw out, that was the first game, and they're literally a bottom 3 team in the country. So throwing that game out, the last 3 games, there have been 164 points scored in Ohio State games, but just 42 second half points. So literally 75% of the total points have come in the first half of Ohio State games. So we're getting under a key number of 24. And we know that, probably 75% of the points are going to be scored in the first half. Jim Knowles has done a great job with halftime adjustments and pretty much just shutting out every opponent in the second half. Now, Iowa's better than anyone they've played so far, certainly. However, I won't be surprised if it's kind of more of the same. But one thing that also kind of works in our favor from a game plan perspective is Ohio State has been kind of vulnerable, if you will, to those first and second scripted drives. They've kind of given some stuff up. So, maybe Iowa scores on its first drive or first 2 drives. Anything Iowa can contribute here is gonna really help this thing go over, because as we talk about with betting overs, you really feel good about it if you think one team might do it by themselves. And I think Ohio State could do it by themselves here.
There are multiple things I like here. One is the thing you brought up about early scripted drives, and also Iowa's coming off a bye. So Tim Lester has been thinking about his first 10 plays for 14 days, the Iowa offensive coordinator. So I like that. The explosiveness in this game. Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson running the ball for Ohio State. They've had a bunch of big runs. Jeremiah Smith catching the ball for Ohio State, a bunch of big receptions. And Caleb Johnson has more big runs than anybody in the country. The idea that you could have a 70-yard touchdown or a 50-yard run that sets up a touchdown, I think is very much on the board here. And again, get it in the first half before they have the chance to adjust in the second half. And also, there's multiple ways to get it. I think 24-0 is possible. I think 17-7 is possible. I think 14-14 is possible. It does not seem like a big ask. The only thing here is we're getting it at minus 122. So for our $500 bet, we're only going to win $909.83. That is a lot of juice, but I was so happy to get it at 23.5. I would not have wanted it at minus 105 at 24, right? That would have been a much worse world. So do you have any hesitation giving up this much juice on a bet?
No, I don't. Not on one like this. One where, where we feel so good about it. 2, where the numbers just indicate, because again, I didn't mention this earlier. I project 51 for the game. So, we're talking 75% of that in the first half is what we're expecting. So I feel really good about the number. I feel really good about, we talk about the vibe. I think the game plan, all of that, all the game script, all of that stuff, I think it all aligns here for us. So I don't really have hesitation to lay minus 122. Like you said, I would rather have this then if it was at 24 minus 105, I wouldn't, I would take it still, but I wouldn't feel as good about getting the 23.5 here. I mean, I would probably play this up to like minus 130.
Okay. All right. So we feel really good about this one. And this is also one of those, a 3:30 game. You only have to watch the first half. You don't have to stay up until 2:00 in the morning to see if the $500 real money bet hits. If you guys are trailing us and doing it yourself, or if you just want to feed hungry kids, you can go about your day. This should be figured out by about 5:00 on Saturday afternoon. Our plus money swings, we're taking 2. We've done this a couple times. And I call these the Florida man bets because we are betting Florida teams. One of them is the Florida State money line versus Clemson. This line is 15. Florida State's getting 15, but we are betting Florida State to win. On the Thursday Kings of the North, I picked Florida State to win as an upset. I think Florida State playing Brock Glenn at quarterback instead of DJ Uiagalelei is a positive step for Florida State and just might unleash something. And also the ACC is nuts. So I feel like we have officially reached the point where people are thinking it's going to be Miami or Clemson in the ACC. And now I think it's possible we come out of this weekend with a Miami loss at Cal and a Clemson loss to Florida State. So I'll take the chaos, a $50 play, plus 440 on the money line. I know you liked it, Florida State plus the points. What do you think of it as a money line bet?
I like it. I think we might as well take a swing here. And I mean, the math supports it. My projected money line on this game is only plus 258. So I mean, we're getting $2 of juice in our favor here. Just in the implied probability, I project Clemson as a 7-point favorite here. Everyone's out on Florida State, and somewhat rightfully so. They've looked really bad. However, by my numbers, they've played a top 10 schedule to date in the country. There are some model makers out there that have them with the toughest schedule so far to date. So they've played a really difficult schedule. Now they've looked really bad doing it. So it's like, take that into consideration. But on the flip side, Clemson's played one team with the pulse and ran out of the building. And then they've just beaten up on crappy teams since then. So like, I think Clemson has gotten really inflated, and I think Florida State has gotten really deflated here. I think this line's way too high. I'm going to end up betting Florida State plus the points here, and I think the money line is absolutely worth a shot here.
Okay. So we'll take a swing and plus 440. That's some nice money if we cash it. The other one is we're going to take the points with Florida State. We're going to take that plus 15 and we're going to parlay it with Florida getting 2.5 points at home versus Central Florida. UCF coming off that loss to Colorado that to me maybe showed UCF isn't quite what people thought. We're getting that parlay. And again, it's not money line bets. We're just taking the points with 2, we think, live underdogs. We're getting that at plus 264, T-Shoe. We understand why we like Florida State here. Why do we like Florida getting 2.5?
Yeah, I actually project Florida as the 2.5 point favorite at home.
Oh, wow.
You mentioned UCF getting destroyed by Colorado last week at home in the bounce house. That was really surprising. There were a lot of sharp guys I know that were on UCF minus 14 in that game. And I mean, that was never close.
Right.
Florida's coming off a bye. So, situationally, I would have loved to have bet on UCF this week because, a lot of times you get that bounce back spot. But I do think the spot favors Florida here for 2 reasons. One, you get your butt kicked at home if you're UCF, and now you have to turn around and go to, the quote unquote big boys in your state and try to get right against a team that's been on a bye. And Florida is desperate. Florida desperately needs this game. Billy Napier desperately needs this game. Yep. If you lose to, quote unquote little brother here, Billy Napier might be getting some walking papers on Sunday if they don't win. So I'll take the 2.5 here. I'll take a shot on the desperate team that's had 2 weeks to prepare against a team that looked really bad the last time we saw them.
Okay. So those are our 2 plus money swings. These bets are already in. We've made them. That's what we're going to try to win money on. But let's go to some of our other best bets. And again, we just had a good week last. We had a bad week the week before. We had a good week last week with our best bets. I'm going to go first here, Tishu, with my 3 best bets, because my 3 best bets are all underdogs that I would be fine taking on the money line. And some of these, let me double check. Yes, all 3 of these underdogs I officially picked to win in our picks that Landis and I do on Thursday. But I'm taking the points with them here for our show. And the first one is Minnesota at home +8 versus USC. That's -110 on DraftKings. USC already came to the Midwest and lost to Michigan. I think Minnesota has had some stupid stuff that's happened. They had a punt blocked last week against Michigan. They should have won the North Carolina game in week 1. They've missed a lot of field goals that they don't normally miss. And Landis and I were talking, we think maybe they found something with some up-tempo offense in the second half against Michigan. That was out of desperation, but if they hold on to that a little bit, I also think they're coming off playing 2 top 10 defenses in Iowa and Michigan. And now USC's defense is better than it was a year ago, but it's not that. So I really like Minnesota getting the 8, and I'd be okay taking a swing on the money line. What do you think of this? And Minnesota's at home at night. So what do you think of this Minnesota +8 for me?
Yeah, I really like this. My number's kind of right in line with the market. I'm about USC -8.5. So, I don't have a strong play on the number, but I do think situationally, kind of game script wise, matchup wise, I really like this pick on Minnesota. I mean, USC showed against Michigan that they're going to struggle against these type of teams that, really can't throw the ball, want to play good defense, and want to run the ball. That's Minnesota, that's Michigan, that's Big Ten football, just generally speaking. I think Minnesota is going to be able to do some stuff. I think you make a great point about they might have learned some things about themselves last week against Michigan in a game. I got them plus 24.5 on the live line, and they almost came back and won the game. So yeah. I like that a lot here. I like Minnesota at home. You mentioned a night game too. I mean, that Minnesota is a fan base that really likes their team. I think they'll be fired up. I think that'll be a really good environment, and I could absolutely, and not to pick on Lincoln Riley here, but this feels like a game Lincoln Riley loses. Just like random, you go to Minnesota and lose. I can totally see it.
So we didn't put it in as an upset pick. I mean, the +8 is really nice to get over that. You're getting more than a touchdown, lose by a touchdown. Minnesota still cashes for you. All right. The second one is Syracuse at UNLV. I feel like the whole world is on UNLV because of all the stuff that happened with their quarterback leading the team over NIL stuff. They put the backup quarterback last week. They blow out Fresno State. But in that game, UNLV has a punt return, or they have a punt block, they have a kick return, they scores 2 special team scores. Fresno State throws 4 picks. UNLV also played Jalen Daniels in Kansas. They got a bunch of picks against him. I pointed this out to Landis, and Landis is like, yeah, and Kyle McCord might throw a bunch of picks too for Syracuse. But I feel like somehow UNLV might have become a public money team, and Syracuse, I think, has more good players. This is an ACC team versus a Mountain West team, and the ACC team is getting 6.5. If you want to take it on the money line, it's +200 for Syracuse. I'm taking it +6.5, and I actually like that Syracuse had a tough loss this year, maybe learned some stuff going on the road. I think Syracuse goes to win this, but I'll take the points.
I'm with you. This is also a best bet for me for a lot of the reasons you outlined. I only project UNLV as a 3.5 point favorite here. UNLV is debuting as an AP top 25 team, and that is always like dangerous territory. Yes. I don't have the exact trends in front of me, but I know that when a team is ranked for the first time in a season and they are playing an unranked team, more times than not, they don't cover. And I actually look for some trends for UNLV as a favorite to kind of demonstrate how infrequent this situation is. I literally couldn't even find any trends because that's how infrequent this situation is for UNLV. They are never favorites, especially against, like you mentioned, a Power 4 team. I think they're getting a ton of credit for beating up on Fresno State, but they had the benefit of playing a quarterback that Fresno State had limited film on. That's not going to be the case here. Syracuse had kind of a layup game against Holy Cross last week, so they're essentially coming off a bye for all intents and purposes. They've been thinking about this game. And I'm with you. I think UNLV has become kind of a public team. Obviously being in Vegas, helps, but I think this is way too many points here. I'll gladly take the touchdown with Syracuse.
So we really like this. So this is the first time this happened that we wind up on a best bet together. So we'll count it on our records. If this hits, or doesn't hit, this goes down for both me and T. Shoe. The last one for me is West Virginia +3 at Oklahoma State. Again, you can watch the Thursday show. I'm sick of talking about Oklahoma State because they played Utah, Kansas State, and West Virginia 3 straight weeks. I think their quarterback is bad. Their run game has not been able to get going. I think what Avery Johnson and Kansas State did, I think Garrett Green and West Virginia have a chance to emulate. I'll take the 3 points with West Virginia. I think coming into the year, West Virginia was a better team. They're coming off a bye. I think they got some stuff right. Hopefully, they've changed some stuff in their secondary. They've had 2 really tough losses. One is to a team that might be one of the 6 best teams in the country in Penn State, and the other was a devastating loss. They blew a rivalry game. Well, this is neither of those. Oklahoma State is not one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the country, and it's not a rivalry game. So I think West Virginia can get out on the road, figure some stuff out after the bye. I'll take the 3. Also, this is +124 on the money line if you want to take this. And I actually think they're going to win, but I like getting a field goal here, Tishu.
I like this pick. As a matter of fact, I'm so annoyed with my numbers for being so high on Oklahoma State after coming into the season so low on them relative to the market. I don't know what's happened here. I project Oklahoma State -7. And when I saw that, I was like, there is zero chance I'm putting real American dollars on them again this week, because I bet on them last week. We went against each other on the Kansas State game. Oklahoma State started strong. Ollie Gordon was averaging 7 yards a carry, and then he turned into a pumpkin, and then it turned into the Alan Bowman show. And there's a reason he's been in college for 7 years. It's not because he's a doctor. It's because he's mediocre at playing college quarterback. And
yeah,
I'm sick of watching it. So I love this pick. This is one that I would go against my numbers on because I'm sick of Oklahoma State.
Okay. I'm feeling good. Which is probably, I don't know. That doesn't know. I don't think I shouldn't feel good, but we had a good week last week and I'm feeling good about all the picks this week. Your best bets. Let's start with one that I feel terrible about, Tishu, because you're doing it again. And you're picking the South against the North, and you're taking North Carolina at home, getting 3 against the fighting Nardogs. How did you not watch the Pat Narduzzi interview? You're betting against well, I guess Nardog could win, and you still maybe Nog will win 27-26, and everybody will be happy. What do you like about UNC getting a field goal here?
They jumped out to I had them last week as a best bet as well against Duke. They jumped out 20-0. And I was like, yes. It was kind of like the Alabama thing. I felt like a genius for 3 quarters, and then Duke storms back and wins by 1. So they still covered. They lost the game, but they still covered for me. But I think because of that small period of time in that game where Duke scored 3 straight touchdowns and won the game, I think North Carolina is still being a little bit undervalued here. And conversely, I think Pitt's been kind of overvalued all year. I've gone against them a couple of times. My numbers still project UNC -8. I referenced, obviously I talk about my other formulas all the time. I kind of spot check that to see what was going on. And the average of all those formulas still is UNC is a favorite here.
Wow. Okay.
I've got the UNC offense as number 16 versus the Pitt defense. That's number 98 in my numbers. Now on the flip side, Pitt's offense is 37 versus the North Carolina defense. That's 67. So I think this is going to be more like a shootout game. But I also think one thing that's kind of inflating Pitt here is they scored 73 in their last game against Youngstown State. And I think that's kind of propping up their unadjusted stats. So there's a lot of people that bet based on, this team ranks this in points per play or whatever, yards per play. But those stats, when you look at them online, are generally unadjusted. So Pitt's offensive numbers look fantastic when you don't adjust for opponent there, which obviously I do in my numbers. So I still think North Carolina is being undervalued. I think they're going to have a good shot to win the game, but I'll take the field goal.
So, yeah, I think my script for this is Pitt storms back and wins with a drive in the final 2 minutes, right? So maybe they'll storm back and win by 2. So, again, we can all be happy here. Again, I could never let this be our $500 bet. You understand that. We'll just put it in your win column.
I understand.
Or maybe your loss column. Then you pick some section. You're picking some section for us here. Missouri, Texas A&M. This is classic section, and this is one of those. I understand it. It doesn't mean I have to like it, but a team that is much higher in the polls is viewed as much more as a playoff contender, is an underdog. So Missouri, who's undefeated, Texas A&M has the loss to Notre Dame. Missouri is at Texas A&M. Missouri's getting 2.5, and you like the Tigers getting the points. Why is Texas A&M favored here?
I not only are they favored, but we've seen kind of some two-way action. Like the line got down to 1, and I was like, okay, here we go. Missouri's about to be favored, and then the line went back to 2.5 in favor of Texas A&M. I don't understand it. I mean, I've been pounding the drum since the summer that Texas A&M is perpetually overrated. I bet against them with Notre Dame in week 1. I'm back again. I think Kyle Field is such an overrated home field advantage from a number standpoint. Now, I'm not saying like you don't have a great time there or whatever, but from an actual like impacting the game standpoint, I think it's so overrated. I think they're the number 1 home field advantage on the EA video game. But I went back and looked since 2022, so the last 2.5 seasons, A&M is just 6-10 against the spread at home. And since 2014, they're 31-37 against the spread at home. So like it's a negative home field advantage. They do worse than anticipated at home. So I've got Missouri number 19 on offense going against the number 21 A&M defense. So pretty similar there. But the A&M offense is 44th, and I've got the Missouri defense number 13. I think that's where the real advantage is for Missouri. I think their defense will be able to take advantage of A&M. And my last point here is that Missouri, their schedule's been pretty easy to date. They have not had to do much or show much offensively to get the job done because their defense has kind of suffocated people. I think this is the week where you see Theo Weiss and Luther Burden kind of get unleashed a little bit, and I think they might make it rain on Texas A&M a little bit.
Okay, they had to play Boston College. That was a pretty good win. They had to come back against Boston College, but I get it. Like talent standpoint, they haven't had to go crazy. So I enjoy betting against overrated Texas A&M. So I am going to bet this personally. I'm putting 3 Lesmerises American dollars on the Fighting Tigers in this one. Last one is Texas Tech plus 6.5 versus Arizona. Arizona coming off a win against Utah. Arizona's kind of had a weird year. We know they have arguably as good of a receiver in the country as anybody, as Tetsuo McMillan, and Noah Fafita can sling it a little bit. Texas Tech has played some wild games coming off a high-scoring win against Cincinnati. You'll take the Raiders, the Red Raiders, plus 6.5 versus Arizona at minus 112. Why?
Again, Arizona is like the Texas A&M of the Big 12, where like they've just been overrated since the summer. And I think Arizona's preseason rating for odds makers and quote unquote sharp bettors is coasting off of what Jed Fish accomplished there and like all of those metrics. And that's not what they are anymore at all. I think they're so overrated. I think this is the perfect time to fade them coming off a win against Utah. And I'm so out on Utah too. Like every week is Cam Rising going to play? Is he not? Kyle Whittingham's playing coy. And then they just don't perform. Like you can't lose to Arizona. So I think this is the perfect time to fade Arizona coming off that win against Utah. I project Arizona as a 2.5 point favorite here. So we're getting multiple key numbers here with this 6.5. I think it's going to be high scoring. I think it's going to be kind of a Texas Tech kind of game, just a shootout. Maybe someone wins by 2, maybe someone wins by 3, but I have a hard time believing that Arizona is going to beat them by 7 or more. So I like Texas Tech here plus 6.5.
And in that game when Arizona beat Utah on its first 2 drives got stopped on 4th down at the 2-yard line and got stopped on 4th down at the 2-yard line. So that's on the first 2 drives of the game for Utah. They marched right down the field and got no points off that. And so it's like, oh, great win for Arizona. And it's like they gave up the yardage, and with a backup quarterback, Utah's red zone offense was a dud. So there's a little right. If Arizona loses to Utah, they're not a 6.5 point favorite here. And there were a million reasons, much, if not all. That's a 23-10 Arizona win. It's not like they just blew the doors off of Utah and a backup quarterback. Much of that is what Utah did wrong and not what Arizona did right. But I think Arizona is like getting credit for it that's affecting the line here. So I like this too. I like all of our bets. I think we have a perfect week ahead, Tishu.
We were close last week. Let's see if we can one up last week and just put a big 0 in the loss column this week. I'm ready.
Let's go. I'm feeling good. We're feeling good because you guys are part of it. So we appreciate you joining us on Bets of the North every Friday morning. We hope you're having a good time. We know we're winning some money so far for charity. We certainly hope we stay above that threshold. It's going to be $5,000 minimum to Feeding America, but we hope it's going to be even more than that. And we hope it continues this week. I think both of our bets, you and I are underwater on our best bets that aren't the $500. Listen, we're picking the best one. 4-1. Where it really, 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 really matters is really good. But I think we're both going to be on the winning side of our overall best bets by the time we meet again next week. So good luck with everything. Hopefully, stuff gets back to normal in your life as much as possible. So best of luck to you and your family and everybody in your town and everybody who was impacted by the hurricane. For now, thanks to our producer, Mike Urostowski, for putting all this stuff together, making us look good and sound good. Tishu, your cellular data held up. Shout out to the cellular folk. Yeah.
Yeah, Verizon. Shout out to Verizon. Maybe we can get a sponsorship out of this. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. In a town devastated by a hurricane, a man was able to make his college football betting predictions thanks to Verizon. Again, very compelling. Very compelling. All right. He's Tishu. I'm Doug Lesmerises. Thanks for joining us on Bets of the North on Kings of the North.